Hello, friends, and welcome to another edition of Transformational Astrology. I'm Henry Seltzer, and we want to be talking about this new moon that's coming up, which is a very strong new moon, as they have been, all these new moons recently, right from through the summer. And we want to take a look at this right away. So here we go. Let's take a look at the chart. So here you can see the chart, and maybe the first thing to mention is that Neptune, which had been in the first degree of Aries, very close to Saturn at one point, now they're retrograding, and therefore Saturn's moving a little bit ahead, or behind really, of where Neptune is. But I wanted to point out that Neptune at 29.5 degrees of Pisces is very close to 0 degrees Aries, which is this house cusp. And as such, in the software, the TimePassages software, we can actually give it a 3 degree, as I prefer, or even a 5 degree conjunction to the ascendant. And this is for the fact that it really is a first house element belonging, since it is so closely conjunct the house cusp. And you can go up to 5 degrees. They call it the 5 degree rule in astrology, that within 5 degrees of the house cusp, it really is conjunct the house cusp, really partakes of that house, as well as the previous, of course. But in this particular case, it's also notable that at almost 0, the sextile between Neptune to the 1 degree 41 mark of Pluto is still very close. And so we have this configuration still with the trine between, an out of sign trine now, between Uranus and Pluto, which does remind me of the 60s. The 60s were characterized by Uranus with Pluto in conjunction in Virgo. And really, this is a similar time in a way, because there's a sort of a worldwide intention. There's a worldwide right-wing movement that is countered by another worldwide liberal movement, which is kind of in opposition to that. And we can see it most clearly here in this country, where there's quite a division ideologically between left and right. And that's predicted by this Neptune-Saturn conjunction, which is now a little bit wider, but which comes back in February to exact. They will turn around by the end of the year, come back to exact in February of 2026. And really, it's so interesting. Rick Tarnas was writing about this in 2000. He talked about the 2004 opposition. He was writing in about 2016, I think, at that point. And he did mention it had a lot to do in the second George W. Bush administration. It had a lot to do with red states and blue states. That term was coined at that time. And it has a lot to do with just this inability of one side to even see the premise of the other. So that it's almost like two camps that are completely in silo, in this social media silo that they each have. So they can't see the other side. And that's something that's characterized by Saturn. Neptune, but you could also say Saturn and Neptune is this antithetical combination of the practical, the here and now, what we can see, taste, touch, and feel, versus what is beyond the physical. Neptune totally partakes, as do all the outer planets, of what is beyond the physical planes of reality that are beyond the current, what we can just touch and see. So on the one hand, Neptune makes a very wobbly practicality where there's illusion, where there's deception, could be self-deception. On the other hand, you can look at it the other way, that this is a way to concretize the beyond, so that things that could be illusions become much more realistic. The illusion becomes real, is one way to put it. And that's a little bit what's going on as well, you see, with the two sides and their ideological persuasion, thinking that's the only reality, right? So very interesting, this timing. And then we want to look also, of course, at the position of the sun and moon and Mercury, because Mercury has come so close to the sun as in the exact timing of this conjunction in late Scorpio. Look at that. That's only, the sun is at 28 degrees and 11 minutes of Scorpio. Mercury's at 28 degrees and 27 minutes, and that's within the 17-minute combination that we consider to be the Mercury Kazimi, which is a time of unusual clarity. So we can say that this new moon represents a moment of clarity where we might be able to see further into the situation that we're all in, personally as well as collectively. So we may see some interesting factors emerge because it would last not only for the new moon itself, the time of the Kazimi itself, but because it's in the configuration of this new moon, it may be longer lasting, a sort of a pause in the in the crazy times, a time of maybe reconciliation to some extent. And can we possibly see the other side's point of view? So that's something to think about. And as well, another thing they say about Neptune and Saturn is one of the key words is deception unmasked. And we will want to see where our illusions can come down to reality and where perhaps deception on the part of politicians can come down to reality, where the truth comes out, it's admitted what's going on instead of what they call gaslighting, right? As we have seen many times. So it's very interesting timing. And one thing is that this position of the Sun and Moon at 28 is very close to the 29-degree position of Neptune here. And also the midpoint of this Saturn and Neptune is 27. We don't want to forget that 27-degree mark of Pisces, because that is a very interesting timing with this 28-degree Scorpio new moon. That's also a perfect trine there, almost perfect trine there. And in fact, it's a grand trine, because if we just take Saturn, we can see that Saturn at 25 Pisces is a perfect trine with Jupiter at 25 Cancer. And these are both changing direction. Saturn has just turned retrograde, and Jupiter's about to turn direct. Let's see. No, I guess not till March will it turn direct again. So Jupiter has turned retrograde. Oh, and Saturn is what's getting ready to turn direct by the end of November. Saturn will turn direct. So they're both going slow. Jupiter has just turned retrograde. Saturn is about to turn direct, you see. And so they'll stay where they are. It's a long-running trine between them. And with this new moon at 28 degrees of Scorpio right now, that is a grand trine. So we have Saturn, Jupiter lit up, which does refer to our political situation. They're called social planets. There's a great deal of interest right now in what's going on in politics, how the society is faring, greatly interesting. And maybe a little bit in a positive light with the Jupiter trine, that does bring a kind of an ease to the situation. So that's very interesting. And then, of course, we have the opposition to Uranus, meaning that surprise revelations, intuition is very strong. This new moon represents a time when we can really begin to see more deeply into things and also get some new ideas that we hadn't had before. Novel ideas come also with this. And in fact, with Uranus and Jupiter not so far off from a sextile to each other, that's also a timing for brilliant ideas to come about. Maybe there will be some solutions to things that could be found. So very interesting timing all around, including the fact that Eris at 2451, almost 25, is actually an aspect to Saturn, an aspect to Jupiter. What is Uranus? What is Eris telling us? Eris is telling us that it's a feminine warrior for soul intention, goes to depth. It is finding what you cannot not do. What is your thing that you really are? This is really it, and that's where you want to spend your energy on what is most deeply and personally important to you. And so it's very interesting that it's emphasized now in this new moon, because that is what is necessary. Everybody really must stand up and articulate their viewpoint and what they truly deeply believe after much thought, after much careful conscious thought, and what they're willing to stand for. And they must stand for it. They must be counted. For one thing, in this country, with the election coming up a year from now, they must prepare and plan to vote in that election, to stand for what they want to see on the scene, the political scene, or it won't go. It's very important for everybody to make themselves heard right now, including there's boycotts, there's expressing opinions, there's marches and protests. Nonviolent is the way to go on that, of course, obviously. So anyway, all these things are contributing, including this idea that Mercury is coming into the heart of the sun. It's just a quarter of a degree separating them. You can see the little notch that marks the sun, moon, and Mercury right here. That's all three of them. And it is interesting that this is considered to be sort of the eye of the storm. The hurricane has a quiet spot, and that's kind of where we're at in this particular instant of the new moon, which is toward late evening in Pacific time, and it will be actually early morning on the next day of the 20th as far as the East Coast and Europe. So while we're at it, there's one more thing that I want to mention, which I've mentioned before in some of these talks, and that is that we have Haumea in perfect square. I mean, now it's a couple of degrees off, but Haumea basically in a very close square with Pluto, and that's been featured in many of the new moons recently. And it's somewhat featured in this new moon as well. We do have, what's most interesting actually there is this 27 midpoint, which is 2720. You can just average the minutes as well as averaging the degrees, and you get 2720. And if we add 15, we get 2820 here. So it's a degree off. That is to say, as far as a sesqui. So there's a sesquiquadrate between, that emphasizes the whole thing that's going on with Haumea and Pluto. So Haumea-Pluto square is once again emphasized in this chart by the fact that there's a sesqui that takes place between Haumea and the midpoint of Saturn-Neptune. So I think it's very fascinating timing all these different configure all these different combinations, you see. And the combination of Haumea with Pluto is also the truth coming out. It is over and over again, and I've observed this and I've cataloged it, and it's going to be in my next book on the new planets. These are the new 21st century planets in the Kuiper Belt. I call them KBO planets. And it is Haumea and Maki Maki, and these are the glyphs that I use. Some other glyphs are also used, so these are alternate glyphs. And they really do have a lot to do with an internal moral compass, trying to guess what's the right way to do it, and trying to have a sense of what makes sense as far as natural law. There is a right way, which is treat other people the way you'd like to be treated yourself. It's very common, it's very simple. It's not that complicated. And telling the truth as you know it is another factor in all that. So when we see this with Pluto, and we see different attempts on different sides to paint the picture, they call it spin in politics, and we would like to cut through that and see what's the actual truth of this matter. And that is emphasized also in this new moon, which carries us into the Christmas season. It'll be a 30-day cycle leading up to the 20th, or I think it's the 19th actually of December. So that's about what I had to share there. Let me see if I can switch back. So, difficult times, exciting times, a little bit dangerous times. We certainly have a lot going on. And, the Chinese word for crisis can also be translated as opportunity. And it really is our chance, this is the time, when things are kind of boiling and bubbling on all different directions. And can we seize the moment and aim things along the lines that we would like to see a future emerge? And I call it a culture of kindness. There's the hope that we can somehow turn this around, get rid of the divisiveness, get rid of the hatred, try to see each other as fellow human beings in all cases, and try to just achieve what we could and what we aspire to if we can only make that gesture toward what we think is right. So that's it. Good luck with that. We may have a little bit of a break here in some of the intensity that we've been seeing. So hope for that, and talk to you soon. Take care.